just bring that up? Once upon a time,
Well,
we used to
I-
be asked if there would be a
I have to
quorum
go back and
available
set all
on
that
that
up.
day. Now we just kinda get told, here's the calendar, figure it out, put it on a calendar. Could we maybe go back to asking if a quorum can make it that day?
On which day?
Any particular day when we do a general, when we do these
Oh, they're
meetings,
combined.
Oh,
they just say, here's the date. And it would be nice to say, does this fit into everyone's schedule?
Yeah.
well, I would just like to respond to that with, I would think that if you can't make it to that meeting, because maybe it's only one or two people, I mean,
Yeah, but she's just saying, give us the opportunity.
yeah, all I'm saying is, I leave Thursdays open for finance meetings, and I know we're gonna have very meetings long, so unless I have something that drastically changes that, then, okay,
It's
that's just my,
But back once upon a time, we used to be asked, even though it was on a Thursday, we used to be asked. It would
sometimes I
be,
read that email that I forget to
it would
respond
be
to
nice
it.
to be
I gotta go
asked
look at the
versus,
calendar.
here it
Is
is.
it considered?
We are volunteers.
Yes.
You don't get paid?
No,
You're doing something wrong.
yeah,
I just wanna go back, I made a point about the increases in the educational. I just wanna state some of the actuals. This year, the increase is gonna be about 1.167 over current
Which
FY
sheet are you
'25.
on?
I'm just looking at the educational budget, wherever it's, I'm just looking at the educational budget in general.
The one in the back of this
Sure,
book or
doesn't
this
matter, they're all the same.
but,
Education
but you
department
can't
hasn't changed.
lump it together because some of them go up because we've had increased enrollment, some go.
Yeah, but like,
That's
I
it,
just
yeah.
looking at it in general, right?
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to make a kind of a overall point, is what I was trying to say earlier is that we've had a lot of jumps up recently in total cost. And we have, whether it's because of new enrollment or not, it doesn't really matter in the idea that it's impacting our budget more.
Well, I agree,
In
but
the
if
last
we've
couple
got
of
more
years.
kids, then
Yeah.
that's just what it is.
Well, and that's a reason.
Kinda makes better sense
But the
than,
people paying for it just see it as an increase, right?
well, yes,
Kids.
but
Big
when
enough.
you can say, hey, listen, we had an extra 88 kids going in the school system, it's
It
a little bit
matters, yeah.
different than when it's,
So just looking
Increasing,
at
it's going up.
the increase going into, I'm gonna start with where we are, for FY '25 budget, the increase from prior year was 1.13 million. The prior year increase before that was 1.25 million. So those are two big jumps, obviously. But the 2 years before that was 422,000 and 480,000. So there was, multiple years, and that's as far back as I can go here. There was a couple of years where, and this is frankly where I kind of came into all this, right? And so I don't have a ton of history before that. But this is kind of what my memory was telling me, is that we had a couple of years of right around or right under $500,000 increases. And then it jumped up in FY '24 to 1.25 and then 1.13.
but even with the 400, we as a town took significant cuts
To get
to
it.
be able to give them that money.
Yes,
So
yeah.
that's the whole thing, we've never, ever, regardless, it doesn't seem like much, but in order to give them that, we took significant cuts, and
Yes, no,
it took many years to get
yes.
back, and.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that, I think my overall point is that we're seeing a much bigger impact in the education in the last couple of years, and we're feeling it. And we're seeing it, we're feeling it, everyone's not happy about it because it's been huge lately.
And that's the state funding.
That's the state funding and,
Our ability to
our
pay.
ability to pay,
Right.
which is also kind of state funding, yeah.
So if we got poor, we wouldn't have to pay as much.
But look at all the
Probably.
big houses they're building, so with the big
Yeah.
houses probably come young families, right?
Well,
With
attract
more-
people
Well,
who
even
can
if
afford it.
it's not young families,
If
those
they
big
income
houses
raises
increases the
income.
assessments for all of those
That's right.
houses around too.
And even like, when someone decides to leave their home, even though it's a modest home, they're now selling it, so it's worth more, and then,
It all drives everything up. I mean, we've seen the housing market in the entire country go up like crazy over the last 5 years.
That's
So
right.
it's not like this is new to anyone. It's just it's creating a problem for us in the educational sector,
Right.
based on the way that the
But
state.
I don't know if this
calculates.
could be a correct assumption, or maybe it's not right, but a lot of new houses may be in town, but there are only a few kids, because our numbers have gone down, 124 students, I forgot what I got the pay, I saved the thing here somewhere. we're down 100 and something students in the system.
Since,
From last year?
Well,
No,
from the last
last
couple of
year-
years.
last year
The
it's-
last
it's-
couple of years.
Okay.
I think it's 60 from last year.
I think so, something like that, he
yeah.
said, yeah.
So if it's, yeah, I mean, I could believe that, but the year before that, we went up, I believe.
I
Or
guess
the year
what I'm
was the year
saying
before
is
that,
every
so-
new houses are bringing in
Yeah.
4 new kids that are coming back into the system, so.
No.
Well, so I live in a neighborhood and I've got 3 families who have kids below 3 years old. So those impacts haven't been seen yet. So they may be down now, but they'll be coming back up.
You're right.
Right, and you're right, and now he explained
That's
to us
okay.
that
Bring up
there are
health
more
insurance for
classrooms and some of
retirees
those
and see how
lower
this one
wages
quiets
more-
right
I don't
down.
disagree with that, I'm just saying, our numbers are
No,
down.
you're right.
How much do we pay for retirees health insurance?
Too much.
Wait,
We should cut that program.
Yeah, we should make them pay the full thing.
Okay, so we've made a few comments. Anyone else on the current budget, which includes the override number and what we're providing for that and what that covers? Any other questions?
It's about the only,
Are you raising your hand?
yes,
Okay.
well, hold on.
If you're talking about the other.
Hold on
whenever
a
you-
second.
yes.
You go first. So it's level funded, but we also have to put out that in the fall town meeting, we did some increases in hours. And we should also state that out there too, because we increased the assistant town clerk, the assistant assessor. So when you look, it's not level funded. And I get it, I understand why, and I'm not saying that it's not, but we need to list all that out, because people are gonna look at it and go, well, wait a minute, how is that? And some of them might not have been there, so,
So that's a good question right there, so in the, again, I'm going by the, like you said, the current one is the full budget. The FY 25 budget column then, based on what Karen just said, does those numbers include the stuff from November?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so okay, all right.
but we still have to say.
No, I
Yeah.
understand, I
We
understand.
have to, we wanna make sure that we are very transparent with all of this, if we're
Absolutely.
gonna try to get anything.
Yes,
so I think that Austin did a really nice job of preparing a document that said, this is the reason why we thought it would be 3 years, why it's not 3
Yep.
years. And I think that's a matter of cobbling that kind of information together, so that we have a document to which we can address it.
so, do we have that document?
I sent it to us.
Okay, I know, but, okay.
I don't think it was for discussion purposes, I just was
Yeah.
digging
I
through
think we
my,
have some.
Well, we had talked about it
Yeah.
Right.
many
I was
times,
digging
so.
through my email and I found
He was
the
being
old forecast
proactive.
from a couple years
Yeah.
ago and just noticed a couple.
But that's the idea, I mean, really, that is the idea. We said, this amount for this period of time. Turns out we needed that amount for a shorter period of time. And for us to be able to be transparent, as Karen was saying, is we need to be able to express that, let people know we recognize.
In line
Well-
by line, how it
Yeah.
affected
And I
it.
think it's important to note that when that was created, it was of the last couple of years of sub $500,000 education increases.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that was based on those increases and using that going forward.
Right,
The 1.25 is what shocked the crap out of it.
right.
And the whole harmless, and,
Well, that was part of it, that was, yeah, so that was the reason, but the trend was, made sense at the time. Jen, go ahead. I thought you were stretching.
No, sorry, I just wanna make sure you're talking about the override budget.
We are talking about the override budget, yes.
I guess, question, thoughts from the finance committee, there's at least 2 salaries in here that are being adjusted for industry standards versus just COLA and step increases. We don't have a policy that I'm aware of that does that, so I just want to make that known and see, in my opinion, that should be something across the board that we're doing for everybody, and it shouldn't be pick and choose just because certain positions bring it up. It needs to be an evaluation, and it needs to be adjusted for everybody. And it needs to be agreed upon.
Yeah, I mean, I give my personal opinion, I mean, everyone can give their opinion if they want to talk. I mean, I think that whenever, and I've had experience in this plenty of times, where somebody comes up and says, you know, I'm underpaid in my position, here's the proof of why I'm underpaid. You know, I'm thinking about leaving, I'd like to stay, but I'd like more money. You do deal with that on a one-on-one basis or as needed basis. If I had all the money in the world, I would love to pay everyone exactly, you know, the market rate, whatever that standard is. Do we have the ability to do that?
No.
Could we, in the coming years, when we hopefully pass some override dollars, I think we would love to see that, and hopefully that's something that we can put into it going forward. But I do just want, my opinion is, in the way, in what we're dealing with, it's kind of a necessity sometimes. And the truth of the matter is, if that person leaves because you deny them the increase, you end up, to Austin's point, when you go out to hire that, not only are you paying for hiring a position which costs a lot of money, but you end up paying that higher rate anyway. So, again, it's,
But see, that's not, that shouldn't be the case. In for-profit companies, yes. But here, we've got a budget. You're not allowed to just go, oh, oops, it's a little bit more, so, okay, where are we gonna cut it? Cause we brought in people at more than the people that were leaving,
you know,
which helped eat away the 2.5 override faster. When the town votes a budget, that's the budget you've got until you go back. I can't hire somebody in for more than what my boss gives me to do. If I do, I have to go back to him and ask. It's no different. We shouldn't be going in and paying somebody $30,000 more than the person who left without going back to the taxpayers and saying, hey guys, I'm really sorry, but the budget you guys approved, I'm gonna have to shoot it in the leg because now I'm gonna have to spend $30,000 more a year.
but in the fiscal year, those differences were made up. Like, we didn't just increase our total spending when those increases happened.
What we did is we ate away at the 2.5 override faster.
I'm sorry, so, what I'm saying is, let's say the total expenses that the town approved was $30 million, whatever that was. We stayed within that $30 million even with those increases, correct? Right, so,
But Karen's point is, we had asked for additional money,
Yeah.
and that was gonna last for 3 years.
Yep.
And when we hired beyond the capability to pay, we consumed that fast. Which is why we are where
And I know the budget that I, as a taxpayer, signed up for. It was told to us the importance of having an HR person, and I know, I've already told you this, the importance of an HR person. We voted in an HR person, and then all of a sudden I find out in the fall that instead we got a director of finance. I'm not saying we didn't need it, but that's not what was sold to us. And
that I see your point.
there needs to be the give and take and the transparency. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have to come and sit at a select board meeting to find out that we've hired this or that or this or that. I should be able to.
and requiring more money for it.
So I will say though that I don't disagree that there's circumstances where that's obviously a problem. And maybe changing a position out for when you think you're getting a different position, I totally agree that's a little bit concerning. But if we lose somebody that's paid $70K and the person coming in wants 72, are we really thinking that we're gonna go back to the entire population and vote on a
If it
2,000?
would-
I mean, it's
The
like.
thing is we're not talking $2,000,
I-
we were talking significant more money.
And I agree, I do agree, I mean, the taxpayers vote X amount for the budget, but say come September, someone leaves, you can't wait until, or December someone leaves, that's better. You can't wait until May to go back to the taxpayers to say, hey, I wanna hire this person, cause then you
Right.
gotta,
That person's
gap
gone
there.
anyway.
they're not gonna hang around and wait
Yeah.
for us, they've got another job.
But if that's a new philosophy, then that should be presented at town meeting, that's gonna happen, because that's not the way it's ever happened in the past. I don't remember it ever. And based on what Karen just said too, and what you were just saying, it may happen in private industry or other places. I don't know of any municipality that would do that. It's always been known that the municipal jobs are slightly less than both the other ones, and there's other benefits that go along with it. But, I don't know.
No, and I agree with that. It's just that when we voted in the budget last year, it was the importance of adding an HR person, and instead we got a
Correct.
finance director. And that's apples and oranges. And we didn't, and truthfully, we never were told. I would say that if you were to poll the average person, they don't know that we don't have an HR person and that we have a director of finance.
Instead.
To be fair, I think if you would poll the average person, they wouldn't know that either of those ever existed. But
Well, no, I disagree, because most people did know we had a part-time accountant. And I'm not saying that we didn't need a full-time accountant. I'm just saying, we voted in apples, we got oranges.
Yep, 100%. Jen, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, my point for bringing that is not to say that we shouldn't be paying these people more, but they came in at X number of salary, and unless it's specifically voted on in a budget to increase that salary, they need to continue on that path of COLAs and steps. So, and it, to me, again, not that they don't deserve it, but it needs to be reviewed. There's many of our positions that have been underpaid because of our budget issues. We don't have as higher paying roles. And it's something that needs to be reviewed across the board. What is the industry standard for the positions? And if we're going to, it should be evaluated
But we were
to
just
be
told there's a
equitable.
policy.
The only reclassification policy we have is if there is a significant change in role or responsibilities. It has nothing to do with bringing anybody up to industry standard.
Yeah, see, and, you know, I think, respectfully, I'm gonna disagree
Sure.
with Jen, and we'll have this conversation offline, but I think in the purposes, and we can pull a policy out and read it verbatim, but again, this happens, anytime we are either looking at recruitment,
Sure.
retention efforts, we're trying to keep good people.
Yep.
And again, this is not just Austin Town Administrator, this has happened with previous town administrators, this has happened with previous select boards.
Yep.
An employee comes to administration, for whatever reason, they're underpaid, their job descriptions change, whatever the reason, and their wages have been adjusted. This happens in organizations across the Commonwealth, whether they're municipal, nonprofit, or for-profit corporations.
I mean, truthfully, this is the time of the year to do it, because it's at the budget time.
But, and this request was made before FY '25, and we were in a tough budget year, and I said, we can't do it.
Right.
So, obviously, we're looking at this budget, if we're looking to do an override, is this an opportunity to reclassify someone?
And I'm not denying that, but it should be equitable. You
Well,
can't
and so,
just, you
Jen, you
can't
missed-
just do it to the
You
people
missed part
that
of the
asked for it.
conversation when but again, that's a reclassification opportunity for us and me to have a discussion with the department head and the employee, to be able to make that decision. We did talk about wage classification studies, which is a goal of the select board. Candidly, depending on what budget, I don't know if we'll be able to accomplish it or not. But, you know, this is something that organizations do as well. There's been some that have been conducted in the past year, they've been adopted. But a wage
Because
classification,
we couldn't
because we
afford
couldn't
it.
afford to pay for it.
We did,
Um,
no, we did them,
Yeah.
but we couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah, well, and respectfully, some of my decision about those employees that were reclassified, were actually less than what that classification plan recommended. So, again, and we've also been inequitable with the override, there were some people that reclassified themselves, and
Right.
it passed,
But
without
who's
flying colors.
approving that? We don't have a classification plan to even know what should
You're right, we
be.
really don't have a
So
classification
we shouldn't
plan.
be doing anything until we have that plan in place.
Well, so we have a classification plan that is a joke, with all due respect.
Yes.
It's probably, what, 5 or 6 years old?
So there's also people that have been placed, whether it's with me or before me, not on the wage scale. So, we can also make a problem with that, right? So I guess, and this is something that obviously I'll work through with my board, but I made a decision to classify someone where I thought was appropriate for the position. And, if I have to deal with the board and if they disagree with me, I'll chat with them about that, but part of my position is try to find and recruit and retain good people to run the organization. And, it's incredibly challenging for a town like Rutland. We do offer good benefits and tell me, municipal employers are trying to find ways to also be more competitive. Because, the private industry is also working on their benefit package, right? Pension isn't the greatest in comparison to some of the other plans that people are offering. Our health insurance is still pretty good, but some employers are even better, right? Our PTO isn't that great compared to private employers, so,
Yep.
you know, where we.
There's not a lot of private employers that get, what, 13 holidays?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, I get half of that.
But what about those employers that offer unlimited PTO? We can't do that, nor do we do that, right?
And truthfully, those people who offer unlimited PTO, if you talk to anybody, they are hard pressed to get any
Yeah.
time.
I work for one, yeah.
It's hard pressed to get that time.
Yeah, yeah, but, you know, so, you know, I think one of the things that, and you'll see a lot of, articles, especially from the Mass Municipal, you know, some of the other associations that talk about communities, you know, we are trying to be competitive also on salaries, and that's why, especially in particular industries like public safety and municipal finance, you know, if you're getting out of grad school and you get your, CPA, you really wanna go work for a town, or you're gonna make a lot more money. So that's where cities and towns are being kind of pushed to be a little bit more competitive on the salary range. On every range, right? I mean, look at,
But for what we're doing, we don't need a CPA.
No.
No,
it's
I'm just using.
Oh, I was like, yeah, I was gonna say, we don't need a
Right.
CPA.
Yeah, you know, and we're also competing again with other communities that are looking for the same talent, especially in the area. We had a hard time in our first recruitment round trying to find a treasurer collector. I'm glad we found the one that we did. I think he's doing a great job, but you can make the argument that, you know, he makes more than Becky. He does. But we had to make an offer to try to get quality, good candidate here. And I'm happy that we did, because I think he's doing a great job.
Alex, may I make just a comment in response to questions about the salary thing?
Yeah, just one second. I kind of said this before, but I get that, you know, Austin needs to talk to the select board and make sure that what the actions that happened were right, wrong, whatever, that's a conversation that they can have. Personally, I do believe that any time that you can spend a little bit of money to keep an employee that is a good employee, whether we believe the person that we're talking about is good or bad, doesn't really matter. Anytime you can do that, you are saving money. Statistically, it's just a fact. So, technically speaking, what he did saved the townspeople money.
So, can I ask one question before you? So Jim, with your question, does that mean that the town select board hasn't agreed to this budget? I thought you guys took a vote on it and this was agreed that this is the budget that's going forward.
We voted on pursuing an override. We didn't have any discussion on the specifics of the actual budget.
So this cut budget, we have not.
No,
The
the cut budget
regular-
is.
We're talking the regular
Regular
budget.
budget.
We're talking the regular budget.
How about the cut budget?
Let's just talk about the regular budget.
We're on the regular-
Why are we even talking about the regular budget?
Well, if they're not, the question she asked, it means that they haven't agreed to this.
Well, it could mean that she doesn't agree to it.
That's what I'm
And
asking.
that could also be my misunderstanding on, like I said, my understanding was we were voting to pursue the override. We did not have any in-depth discussion on anything specific to the override.
Could we clarify me why we're even talking about this budget if we're going for the cut budget? Why are we wasting our
No,
time?
we're not going for the cut budget. What he said,
No, no,
when
no,
we sat,
but we are.
when we started out, he said, let's talk about the presented
What is
budget
the
that
point?
requires an override.
Well, it is on the
Where-
table that we're going for an override, so that
Right.
was approved.
Well, I thought the selectmen said they wanna move forward with the cut budget.
Oh.
But yes or
No, I
no?
don't think so.
It's only worst case scenario.
That's all, this is if the override doesn't
The
pass.
override doesn't pass.
Then-
That's not gonna be the only budget we put forward, we want the override.
So
Okay.
I guess I don't.
I guess I missed.
So I guess I don't understand, so
Sorry.
the board voted for an override, but they didn't approve the budget that supports the override?
I'm gonna say that's
What goes
me
along with
speaking.
it.
The
So,
other members might disagree
it
with
goes
that.
back to my question. We didn't get this original budget, they're not in agreement yet.
We don't know that.
We don't know.
Well, then why are we meeting?
Well, because
This is the budget that was presented to us. Let's
Yeah, but it's gonna change, why are we
Well,
wasting our
the
time?
whole thing is what is it, April fourth is the
I don't think
first,
we're
is the
wasting
first
I
one?
don't think it was.
I don't disagree with you that it's a problem
April
that
sixth,
it's not.
But
that's
this is-
coming up quick.
This is the budget that requires the override, that's why
Yes.
we're talking
Yes.
about it.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
if the override passes, then this is the budget we've
That's,
got to work
well,
with.
But-
Karen's point is that technically that's
If,
not been.
with the question that
I
that
understand
was
what the
asked,
question-
I'm asking if they've agreed to this, and
Well-
I guess,
We still got a few weeks before we get towards the end.
I just wanna clarify, this could be me, completely me, I'm sure the rest of the board will disagree. I anticipated there being additional discussion with line item changes here or there, and we have not talked about anything specific to that. I had some questions that were outstanding, the one I had tonight, which I didn't get a response at yet, which is why I brought it up tonight. So there, it was just my question, I could be over, I just wanted to bring it up as something for discussion.
Yep.
Like you said,
Okay,
we voted
makes
on the
sense.
override
2
budget, if
weeks.
that means we adopted the
2
budget as
weeks
is, then
from
that's what that
the
means.
first information session.
I just had questions.
Well, so, you know, and I may be reading these minutes wrong, but I'm just looking on March third, and that's why we delayed the initial budget discussion
Right.
to March fifth and March sixth. On March third, there was a discussion amongst the board to adopt, the FY twenty-six budget contingent on a $2.1 million override. This was the FY twenty-six budget that was
Okay.
presented at the
Okay,
time.
okay,
So it has been
Right.
approved.
So, you know,
So it's not gonna
and this may
change.
be a misunderstanding amongst
Well, we can't
board
have
members
it
that are here, but,
change.
Well, that's, okay.
We
Okay.
can't have it change
but
it
this
for
is the
two,
budget that was
because we're
presented
gonna be
around
going out,
February.
I know,
Yeah.
I
You
know,
know.
that's the reason I'm asking is because we're gonna be going out and speaking to this and having people question us. And I don't wanna have to say, well, I think this is what it is, but I'm not sure.
Well, Austin just answered the question.
I know, that's what I'm saying, that's why I'm asking.
Is the finance grade the only people that didn't even speak at this thing?
No, it
So it better not be,
Sure.
better not
Well,
be.
he said he was.
No,
gonna
it has to be
spread
more selective, because they're the ones
I was
holding the
putting
budget.
I said,
that. You have another question coming behind you.
oh, speak it, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
So, my only comment was, if all it takes is an employee going to their department head and saying, I want to be met with industry standards on a budget, I think that should be communicated to the staff that that is the option. Because I don't think that given our budgetary issues, most staff members would ever feel comfortable making that request. And the fact that I could quit tomorrow and come back a week from now and make more money, because I can say I'm not gonna work for anything less than this, and then somebody else gets it, that is very troublesome policy.
Yeah, don't disagree with that at all.
Well, and, you know, with all due respect, I think when these policies were passed, I think there was discussion and communication from the HR director at the time that, you know, provided details about these policies. And there were questions, you know, from staff members. We also discussed this at department head meetings and provided information about this. I believe reclassification was also discussed. You know, surely there's a lot in there. The policies are very comprehensive, but, you know, there's opportunities for people to, you know, there's vacation rollover, there's reclassification, there's a lot of good things in there that, to Tamika's point, they may not be aware of, but, you know, that's also, you know, a little bit of a responsibility of employees to take a look at the policies, and if they have questions, come to HR, come to our office, go to their department heads and you know, seek more information.
Respectfully, we did read the policy, but it doesn't say if you wanna make more money, come see us.
Okay,
Well,
this is really beyond the finance
Okay.
committees.
Yep.
Truthfully, this would be a discussion to have with Austin and the select board,
Okay,
because we don't have any control of the policies. They're the policy-making board, they tell us that, so they're the policy, go to them.
Right.
It's a tough thing.
I agree.
And it happens in every company all over the place. Everyone deals with it and everyone hates it. And I've heard that exact statement numerous times and I think I wish it wasn't the case, but unfortunately it is.
It's
It
pretty
doesn't
much
make
why
it
there
good,
are,
but
it's pretty much why there are unions. The
yeah,
unions do that.
kinda, yeah.
It's exactly what it is.
You're not wrong about that.
You are 100% correct.
Yeah. Not that always helpful.
Continuing on,
And by the way, unlimited vacation is bad for the employee and good for the employer. So,
I agree with you wholeheartedly, because you never get it.
well, that's not even a thing. You don't have an asset. When you leave the company, you don't get any money. It's better for the employer Anyway, okay, so we've talked about I'll call it the override budget, that's what it is. The override budget, we've talked about it a few times. Does anyone have any further conversation on that? I think there was a lot of conversation to be had on other things, so I just wanted to make sure that we talked about that fully. I'm sure there'll be other things in the coming weeks, but everyone good for now for that? We'll move on to,
Okay, so in this override budget, the green, I'm calling it the
The
green
green
budget.
Green
Sure.
budget?
makes sense?
I guess what you were saying was, anybody have comments on this, any particular items, is that what you're saying?
Anything whatsoever. If you wanna talk about it, I wanted to make sure that there was a forum for us to talk about it and make sure that we were making any suggestions back to Austin and the select board, that if we thought, you know, X should be changed, X should be added, X should be taken, whatever the case, I wanted to give a forum to our board to make sure that any recommendations were made.
Well, you heard what I said, I said what I thought about it, so.
With the water and sewer enterprise? With what was budgeted?
Yep.
Do we have any ideas to what the increase will be?
Rate-wise,
Ish.
no, so,
I just like to look at Tommy's reaction.
yeah, no, so,
That's why I stay on the board, it's just to see Tommy's reaction when we talk about water and sewer.
yeah. So obviously, so we did a 15% rate increase on both water and sewer.
Yes,
I think the idea was also to try to generate some retained earnings, so,
right,
I think we wanna get a little bit closer to the end of the year, see what revenues look like, and then we'll set our rates.
no, and I understand that, but so it's a,
Drill well.
Yeah.
I know you
I
have the
wouldn't
budget
expect
something.
another 15%.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Drill a well. Drill a well.
You know where I live, I can.
Sure you can. Just get a big drill.
Well, and
It's all rock.
Yeah.
My house is built on a rock.
You got enough money, you can sell it.
It's true.
You run into a rock, you just blow it up.
Yeah.
I know that, one of the things that I had mentioned, during the department meetings, and obviously this is a cost, right, is the firefighters' equipment that is literally causing cancer. I would love to see that added to the budget, obviously, that costs money, so I get it. But I still think that that's something that is very important. I mean, that's our employees' health that we're talking about. That to me is paramount and extremely important, so.
So one of the things that's in the draft capital plan, to be obviously finally approved by the select board, is an appropriation, of $60,000, for 12 sets of turnout gear, with the goal of over essentially 2.5 years replacing the entire set. And that would, this override budget be paid through, raise and appropriate? So you see, just under the town budget, you see, well, this is on the wrong one, but on the,
Full budget.
yeah, new model, there's $135,000, $60,000 is for the turnout gear, $75,000 is in response to some comments in the finance committee about the school maintenance fund.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So establishing a school maintenance stabilization fund, with the idea you appropriate money into that at the annual, and then that money can then be taken out either at the fall or the following year for spending plans of work they need. So just, and it protects that, the money stays in that fund, all the interest stays in that, kind of like what they tried to do a couple of years ago with the revolving fund, but establishing a special purpose stabilization fund. So both of those are in the draft capital plan, again, need to be finalized by CIPC and ultimately approved by select board, but,
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that that's, you know, on the
Yeah,
mind,
that's a
because
good
that's something that resonated heavily.
So I have a question.
I
So-
just love it.
Again, in this budget, if it passes and everything goes forward, and after listening to the DPW director last week, or whichever day it was in front of us, is there, do you plan, or have you spoken with him, or whatever, what's some, we've been trying to put some extra money in the capital equipment stabilization fund. Is he gonna be able to replace some of those pieces of equipment down there that he was complaining about? I don't want, we don't wanna see our, you know, I don't know if you read the paper this morning, but did you see the article of Barry, they're driving around with all these trucks with
Yeah.
ejected stickers on them, it said?
He wasn't even frankly complaining. It was more, a lot of
No.
us who brought, I mean, we were all kind of fighting for it. I know, I just
I'm
wanna
not
make
saying he
sure
was
that,
complaining, he
yeah.
was telling us
Well,
about
he
it,
did
and
say that.
we've talked about the street sweeper and some of his trucks over the last 2 or 3 years, so.
Yeah, so the draft capital plan right now, which is subject to change, there's a few other recommendations I think that are going to be made by CAPC, but just for Public Works alone has 75,000 for school maintenance, 60,000 for the dump, one of the dump body replacements, 200,000 for sidewalk machine replacement, 230 for front end loader replacement, and 50,000 for tractor replacement. There's also a vehicle swap, if you will. In FY '28, the fire department requested replacement of car 3. CIPC is recommending advancing that 1 year and giving car 3 currently to the water department to replace their vehicle. So, 2 for 1, I guess, if you will. And there's a bunch of other, items in here on the capital plan, but just for DPW. So to answer your question, a lot of investment in DPW this year for the capital plan.
Didn't we approve a few items last year for like plows and chains and, do I remember that?
Yeah,
Been done?
so we had, replaced, 2 of the vans, so the facilities van and the sewer van, both were replaced. We also,
Wasn't there a plow, when was a plow still?
Yeah, and I think it was
Top of my head.
about a year or 2
Was
ago.
that,
Yeah.
was it last year or the year before, I
yeah,
can't
I don't
remember which one it is.
plows.
There was, I think we bought a truck with a plow, I think Joe was here, so that would have been the year before.
Maybe.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so we did, I'm just pulling this up, we had, obviously we did borrowing for the ladder truck, 2 facilities vans, 60,000 for garage repair and maintenance at the DPW, and then 75,000 for phase 1 of the water treatment plant modernization. So no plows this year, but I believe in the previous years they
I
had.
want to say that was last
It
year.
blends together.
Yeah.
It does. It does, especially when you do it at work, it really blends together.
Yeah, it does.
So I have a follow-up question on that. Okay. So, Austin, is there, I've been thinking about this, do you have, you must have somewhere, a listing, could we get some kind of a sheet that shows the town and all, each department and what vehicles they have?
Like an asset inventory?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep, we
And
have
then
that.
same thing with the employees, departments by department, and then underneath that list, all of the employee positions?
Yeah.
It's kind of a thing,
Like a roster.
just something to reference, so we know when we're looking at these things, we can understand, at least so I can understand more clearly what all the things that we got are.
Makes sense.
And I'm not talking about all the, like DPW, all the small tools, just the vehicles and that kind of stuff that we have.
Large assets, yeah. Tools, tools generally, yeah, so.
What is the rule for the town for an asset, 25, 15?
We don't capitalize anyway.
Just asking.
Yeah.
What puts them onto
The
an asset
Capital.
list?
Top of my head, I don't know. I know it's in our audit, what it says the capital asset.
It's an interesting question.
Yeah, because I know there's always something, because otherwise, some could
IRS.
say this, yeah.
The IR seems it.
Mhm.
You're not appreciating anything.
Hey, a lot of the old town reports listed 1 pick, 2 shovels, 3 rakes.
Those are expense items.
That's weird.
And
That's
the people
before
who
my time,
operate.
too. That's before my
Alright, anything else on current budget? Again, I'm sure we'll talk more about it, I just wanted to make sure that there was a plenty large forum to talk about it. Good? Okay, good.
Okay,
Oh,
that's,
okay.
yeah, I figured it had to be pretty big,
Oh,
because,
and you're not appreciating it, like, yeah.
well, that's the reason why I asked, because I was like, okay, what makes it,
I mean, if this goes forward and
It's
the
25.
override does pass, I mean, I think this budget is pretty full and pretty well laid out.
I think it makes sense personally, I mean,
No, it does. Thanks.
Yep.
There's not a lot of fluff.
yeah, there's help to, some things that,
Right.
6.25%, that's what I was talking about, I just found
which that one is contracted.
that. Right, no, I understand, that's all I was just saying.
Yep.
so. Yep. He's not tied to 8 or something like that. Yep.
Okay, budget, is there anything else, any other topics? Cut budget next, okay, cut budget. I'm opening it up to the cut budget, what do we wanna talk about with the cut budget? I guess I'm just gonna open it up for comment and, we'll start there.
So how is it determined what was cut?
So this is a modified version of the original cut budget that was included actually in this
Okay.
document. So some of the numbers are pretty close, but there was a directive from the select board to change a few things. So, as I mentioned in my note briefly to you folks, levels funding salaries for department heads and other non-union staff. There are also proposed reductions in hours for other non-union employees, for example, our library employees, aides and assistant librarian, children's librarian, that reduced hours. So they weren't level funded, they were actually reduced.
Do we have to, are there any rules, for lack of a better word, for the library at a certain level?
Staffing, at the top of my head, I don't know. I think, I know at least the explicit rule that they have is the amount of money that we spend on books.
And I think there is something, if we go over 10,000 population, there was a
And there's
rule.
also something you have to be open so many hours, otherwise you don't get certification.
Right.
And we've missed that a good many years.
Yeah, it could be, but we have to look at it, right?
But I agree, but I'm just saying,
Not
we've
that we
missed that.
want 'em, but
There's also, as I mentioned, there's reduction of level of services for clerical staff, 25% reduction in hours. That was the initial proposal to establish a funding source. I've already actually had extensive discussions with ASME reps. We have to bargain that anytime that there's a modification to services, we're bargaining that, so we're working on that right now. So what you'll likely see is those amounts for those respective employees will change based off of negotiations with union staff. And I've actually received an initial proposal to see what that looks like already. No funding provided for the new positions in police and fire. And then no principal changes with exception to some lines here and there, for example, in the facilities budget. Modified those a little bit just to be a little bit more realistic about what we're actually gonna spend for some of our buildings. And to balance all of this, it includes the incorporation of the use of up to $250,000 in free cash to balance. And those are just changes.
And just to, one note on top of that, the 250,000 is coming from the school budget, and if that didn't, the override doesn't pass, and the school budget passes the other 4 towns, it would be an additional 250,000 from free cash, so it's really $500,000 from free cash. No?
With our cut
Misunderstanding
numbers,
this.
with a full assessment of both Baypath and Wachusett requires the use of $250,000 in free cash.
Okay, I misunderstood that, okay, sorry. The cut in the fire department, I know that, the chief had said that cuts in the fire department reduces the revenue, is that taken into account as well?
Yeah, so, obviously I had a discussion with Chief about this, about the impact of it. These are currently filled by part-time positions right now, so, we're not losing full-time staff, that exist right now. So we'll still have part-timers in call in here to kind of fill the gaps, especially for scheduling purposes, but, obviously it's not what the chief wants, but to make the cut, we couldn't fulfill those requests.
So we would lose revenue,
Hypothetically, we lose revenue right now, based off of our availability. So there's sometimes, and that's why I think you wanted to add those, new positions, to be able to make sure that we can cover more maintenance costs. We are making, a play for some regional medical transports to try to help us get a, kind of a standard contract, if you will, to be the guaranteed provider for medical transport for some regional medical institutions.
yeah.
Which, we're gonna propose either way, with override or not. But yeah, there may be an impact here, guys, but, it's hard
So with the other cuts, or the other changes, I should say, they're cuts, but the other changes based on going down the list and just saying you gotta take X amount of dollars off, or?
Yeah, so the initial, like that initial cut budget that you saw in your book there, Tommy, you know, we had, at that point, we had projected a $2.1 million deficit, and then we took a percentage of each of the departments, so for example, as was just mentioned, the fire department, they are 25% of our budget, less our fixed costs, so they had to take 25% of the 2.1 million, so originally it was a big cut of, you know, like 500,000 or something. And then, obviously, that's a deep cut, bodies, so based off of, direction from the select board, we added back some more resources, which require changes elsewhere, and then ultimately use it for cash.
You said no department head salary was cut? Is that correct?
With exception of, the town planner, reduced hours to 30 hours.
That's reduced hours, so that's, I mean, that's obviously getting less money, but it's not technically a pay cut, that's a reduced hour. And, not
But
that we
he's a
want that.
salaried individual.
Yeah.
If you're salaried, you don't lose hours, you lose pay,
But you just said you'd go down to 30 hours.
regardless. When you're a salaried individual, you work your hours, you lose your pay.
Oh, their salary, yeah. And probably most of those people
I mean,
work extra hours anyway.
You don't cut a salary is you work whatever hours it takes to get the job done.
You're supposed to.
That's what you're supposed to do.
Okay.
So if you're cutting the pay, you can still that's still,
So I don't disagree with
Yeah.
you, but a salaried employee could be salaried for 30 hours a week. You could be a salaried employee at 30 hours a week.
but
Right,
he's,
you could be.
So he's saying he would decrease the hour, the salary contract to 30 hours for.
he's not on contract.
It's a cut in hours,
It's a cut in hours.
Um,
And if you have a person
So
that's a
we're only
salaried
gonna have him here
worker,
30 hours a week.
it comes in at 8 o'clock in the morning,
So,
goes
what-
home
right now,
at
that's the
whatever
plan.
time
What
it
was he
is,
doing?
then
Town
that's
plan,
salary for
Yeah, 40 hours.
So
40
cut
plus.
hours. But
So
most
his
people
salary on
are
the
willing
40
to do
is X.
extra when they need to do it.
His salary on
But they
30
shouldn't.
is gonna be X minus.
I don't know.
Yeah, it takes his rate, and instead of doing it by 40 hours a week, you know, 52.2 weeks, it's 30 hours a week.
Okay.
So this thing, yeah.
Alright.
I guess, you know, the clear cut there is the town administrator salary.
Yeah, I was kind of coming to that, but before, so, again, and we all know this, but I just wanna make sure this is stated, that, you know, we're cutting his hours to 30, that's assuming he stays. A lot of
Yep.
people, if you're
Yeah.
cutting their hours, they're not gonna stay. If we like these employees, if they're doing good for us, we don't wanna do that to them, obviously. Again, this is a cut budget, we're not, you know, most of us have all said that we're not in favor of this. I think everyone here has, but it's what we're talking about right now,
Right,
so.
the reality is, if the town doesn't approve the override, this in fact will be true.
Correct. And many of these employees who we are cutting hours to, who are longtime employees and good employees, will likely leave.
They may make that decision.
And then the problem is, you hate to see that happen,
Yeah.
but then the problem is, how do you attract new employees?
Yeah, especially
Why
with,
would anyone wanna
They're gonna
come work
want
here?
more.
right, which is all the more reason why an override is so
How
necessary.
long,
Well, it
how
is,
many
but it
hours
just
does
may not
an
happen.
employee have to work in order to get benefits?
20.
Okay, so then anybody that we're cutting isn't going down to the point where they're losing benefits?
I think there's one employee at the top of my head that is currently the position is currently benefit due to their hours that would be reduced.
Okay, so that's an even bigger hit for that.
Something that we'd have to be.
Actually, well, that employee has given their notice, already, so.
Oh, okay. Then it's less of a concern, I guess.
Yeah, it's still a concern.
It is a concern, but it's less
It's a
of a
concern
concern.
because that employee giving their notice could be a reaction to just talking about this. I don't know if it is, doesn't matter, but, that's, you know, again, we're losing talent
I agree.
because this conversation's even happening.
And I've said this before, but I don't know how our employees do this on an annual basis,
I never
to go
would.
through this, because personally I wouldn't.
Couldn't pay me enough.
So I give them credit and I give them my thanks.
Yeah.
But, and I know we need the override, but if it doesn't happen,
So
this is a reality.
any employee of a municipality is always employed at the will of the people. You know, so when they make a decision as to what they feel they wanna do, what they wanna pay, then the employee makes a choice. You know, I don't like to think that they would have to do that, but the fact of the matter is they have to protect themselves.
I agree.
So, I haven't looked at all, cause I'm trying to find them as I go along here, but, I'm noticing here too that, well, the health inspector, that's 45%. Somebody else I just saw here was, the health clerical wages is 78% down, the change. I mean, most of the clerical ones that I see are like 25% off.
Yeah, so there's a shift there, so, the proposal from the Board of Health is to allocate more from the revolving fund to offset some of the general fund impact. So you'll see that reflected in the revolving fund budgets.
Is that in here?
No, they're not in here. You will see, and ultimately, again, this is, especially for anything that says clerical on it, is still subject to bargaining and final approval there, right? But, mitigating the impact on the general fund and shifting some of that to the revolving fund for those hours. So that's why you see a larger impact there, because those would be picked up by the Board of Health.
So, but I guess what my concern is we've talked about this every year, and these people in these positions are the ones that are doing the yeoman's work of, what they gotta do to make everything run, and it just seems like here's the spot that's gonna be the worst job right there, about people either leaving or not able to keep up with what they're doing, for sure. And I guess my viewpoint on it was, instead of taking, and I don't wanna use that word like you hear all the time about the easy, I don't wanna say easy pickings, but the lower salaried or hourly worker people, it would seem to me that you should look, no, I shouldn't say you should, it would seem to me that the way to personally do it would be to go find, what did we add in the last couple of years that we could remove that's a bigger number to make up for all of that, so we don't have to make those big cuts in those positions.
Yeah,
I mean, I agree, the department heads and these other ones, you're just taking the possible raise away from them. But they're still making that other salary, but these other people are losing a quarter of it, well, what I can see so far, I don't know if that's true for every one of them, but
it's close enough.
it's a quarter of what they're doing is gone.
If
With
they
this
stay.
budget,
What they're being paid is fine.
right.
Yeah, and well, their hours would be reduced too. So I again, not that that's, I make sure that I
But what I'm
express
saying
heavily
is,
that that's not what I want.
is there something
but-
else in here that's, I'm not saying look at the things that must, things we must have to run the town, but things that we added in the last year or two that are bigger numbers that could be taken out and say, okay, that's a way to take a bigger chunk of them, because we're looking for a big chunk of money to reduce.
Yeah, I mean, my immediate view and look at this, obviously, police and fire obviously required, it's needed, but the police and fire decrease is the smallest decrease in the entire cut budget. Is that required, is that needed? I don't know.
Departments required?
No, I mean, like, could they be cut more, are we, if we cut more, is it infringing on safety? It's obviously nothing I wanna talk about, because, again, this is, the override is what needs to happen,
With what we're cutting DPW, that's gonna affect our safety.
absolutely.
'Cause there's no two ways about it, at this point, they're not gonna be able to take care
I
of us
mean,
the way that we have to.
It's difficult to do an equitable cut, I don't disagree with that, I understand that, but in this scenario, everyone is being hurt way more than police and fire. And, we talked about department heads, all the department heads, except for a couple, are getting reductions, including our town administrator is taking a huge pay cut. And it kinda seems like the other department heads should be following that suit.
Well, you said other, yeah, okay, Austin maybe, but the other ones are only.
That's what I'm saying.
Right,
Yes, they
they're
should-
only taking the,
Yeah.
what they might get for a raise that
Right.
way.
Yeah, we should, I mean, if this, a fair version of this would definitely be department heads taking a bigger hit, and spreading the hurting amongst others.
Well, I guess, and what I'm saying is the clerical part of it, or those,
Yeah, the people.
that level
yeah,
of
yeah.
workers that are doing all the
They're getting hit the
mundane
most.
work and all the, well, what, I don't wanna say the wrong word, but, those are the ones that should be, we talked about keeping people here and not having them run off on us. I think that's gonna be a very important spot to keep our resources in.
We cut the budget completely for having no town audit. Does no one read out, anybody else read the paper, that's like the number one thing that people, when they don't do it, that's when they find out 5 years later that, you know,
Oops.
Oh, yeah.
that they've walked away with millions? And I'm not accusing any one of our people, I'm not saying that, but by not doing this, we could be missing stuff.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
The, yeah,
I have a question. At the senior center budget, did you cut the hours or did you just cut the salaries?
I just saw that.
Can I
For-
answer that? I know the answer.
So for the outreach coordinator, so that's a union position, so that's, as I mentioned, part of the clerical union, there was a initial proposal of a 25% reduction in hours. So the reduction that you see there for the outreach coordinator is a part of that cut. And then the rest of the cut you see for the expenses were the cuts that were initially included in the initial cut budget submitted by the director.
But the director's not part of the union.
Correct?
Pardon?
Yeah, correct.
She is?
No.
She's not.
There's no change in salary.
Yeah,
for
so
the
there's no
director.
change, so that's level funding from FY '25, which is 2 columns over. So for our current fiscal year at 66,891 to this year, 66, or 981, sorry. So she'll make the same next year.
It's the same salary as this year?
Correct.
Nancy.
Nancy.
Yep, correct.
the outreach.
Yeah, that's what this says, it would just be the same amount from this year.
So I wanna make a comment on the overall cut budget. One of the things that I think we talked about a lot when we were talking about the override is that we needed to show why an override was important. And based on this budget, this cut budget, I really don't think that the average town person is gonna feel hurt from this. I think that our staff members are going to be very resentful. I think that we are going to lose a lot of great people, and they are going to be very hurt from this. And I think there will absolutely be some people who are hurt from this in town, outside of the staff. But the general population, I'm afraid, looking at this, is gonna say, I can deal with that, let's, you know, we don't need an override. And that scares me, because then we're gonna say that's gonna happen for 1 year, we're gonna come back next year, and we're gonna be three-ish million dollars in the hole, and then we're gonna absolutely need an override, and now we just lost a whole bunch of great, town employees that were doing a great job, and now we're gonna need an override anyway, and we're gonna probably try to hire some of them back, and we're not gonna be able to find anyone, and we're gonna suffer more and more and more as we go through the years. I don't, it does not mean I have the correct answer, I'm just making a general comment about how I feel about this.
So you're saying the cut budget needs to show cut in more services?
Yeah. Cause otherwise, there's no motivation in this to me,
I agree with you. I
I'm
do.
afraid that there's no motivation. I mean, again, I want an override. I'll make that abundantly clear. I am all for an override and making this work and making this town, as great for services and doing everything that everyone wants. We need that in this town. We absolutely need that in this town. But if you go out to people and say, you know, here's what we're gonna lose, if you don't pass this override, I don't see that happening with this cut budget, especially the fact that we're taking free cash and balancing the budget. I mean, that's just like, they're absolute, no one's gonna, they're all gonna be like, fine, free cash, cool. That's, I mean,
We shouldn't be doing that.
Are we allowed to not fund Wachusett birthdays? I thought we had to fund that because we're part of it.
Yeah, but this is such a notification that we're not renewing the membership next year.
Okay. And then, so we would lose those, and I've always been told, because believe me, I've brought this up, we could just shut off the streetlights. There's still a cost. I was always told there was still a cost to shutting off the streetlights.
Yeah, I don't know the cost off the top of my head, Karen, I don't know if you have history from that.
I don't, all I know is that in the past, I've brought it up, how easy it is to just flip the switch.
To be honest, I
it's really
expect,
save electricity.
Karen, I can tell you how much it costs a month to run them.
No, but there's a cost when we shut them off, it's just not turn them off.
Why do you have to pay
some of
now?
that.
There's something
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
pay, I
To be
just
honest-
remember over the years, when I brought it up, I was told, here's the other side of
There's
it.
probably a fee to them to go in, because they have to go to each pole and cut the wire.
There's something we have to
We'll probably
pay.
do some of that spending this year then. to be honest.
That's the only thing, that and for all these cuts,
I would like to know. what that-
potential cuts, you've taken into account the unemployment?
No. We haven't changed the undistributed expenses line item yet, not knowing, unemployment's a little bit hard to predict, right, because we're not sure who exactly is gonna file, how long they're gonna be on. So our thought was to, keep some funds available in the undistributed expenses line items, and do a transfer, to the Medicare line as those unemployment claims come in. We also would first deplete our unemployment trust fund first before making any expenses out of the general fund.
How much is in the trust fund?
I knew when he brought it up, he had the number.
It's almost like he was waiting for that question.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure, cause that was the thing,
Yeah, anytime we get anything like this, we need to make sure.
I
we
just
have that.
remember Gary telling me we couldn't shut off the lights. Now granted, that isn't always the best thing to listen to, but
Yes, this isn't my most recent report, there's 33,000 in there. This isn't the most recent report that I have.
that's close enough.
There's some money, but it's not enough to
Not enough.
carry a budget.
So one of the things that you bring up is this alone won't justify. So what we need to be able to do is what we have planned to do, which is the information sessions. I guess the expectation there is that department heads at the very least will come in and explain what their needs are. And if the cut that's proposed happens, how would it impact them? And how would it impact their services to the town? That would be I would expect that would be the form, one. And then two, at the town meeting, I would expect that they would be prepared to do the same thing here.
Why aren't we using some free cash so that we don't have all these other issues?
So, we don't have that much free cash to cover the entire budget deficit.
I understand that, but
Okay.
I was told there was close to 2 million in there,
There's $1 million, I believe, right now.
1 million?
Yes. I get it. Free cash is one time, right, so you spend it, it's gone. Anytime we put free cash towards an operating budget, the next year, you don't have that free cash anymore, so the problem next year is just gonna be that much bigger. And that's honestly what we did last year, right? We spent, a good amount of free cash and a good amount of, money from ARPA. To balance about, I think it was like $700,000 of those two sources. We did that knowing that that was a one-time source and it would carry us for that year and that it would create a bigger issue this year. Because we didn't think it was the right thing to do last year to go for an override. But the problem is, it'll help us a little bit right now, but it won't get us far enough this year, and then it'll just continue to create a problem. And then you also don't have those funds in future years to fix an emergency leak in a roof or other things, because really that money, we have a stabilization fund, which is hopefully for that, but honestly, if something major happens, or even minor, $1 million nowadays gets us, unfortunately, so little. Yeah.
So we'll go on forever with, overrides every year.
Well, that's what it's looking like right now.
And I think that's important to be able to show that.
Yeah, well, I think the conversation and
But can I just follow what you're saying? We've been using free cash every year towards the budget, and every year we get don't mind my term, but we get a lecture on, we shouldn't be using free cash for budget items. And we've had people come in from the state people and school, same thing, you shouldn't be using, we know that, but we've tried to balance the budget as we got down to the wire before town meeting. And yes, now this year we have a little bit more in there, but we have used free cash, and I know you were here when I was asking earlier, we got a number of things at the highway barn that we need to get some of those vehicles upgraded for them that are very old, and that's, we've been putting money into the, capital stabilization, trying to do that, we've done that when we had some extra money the last few years, and then we have the free cash, that's the only place we can get it from.
there's another point on the using stabilization fund, which Karen, talks about, is that when we go to look for debt for any purchases, like a new building, a new vehicle or whatever, when you have those funds in reserve, you can generally get better interest rates. So in the long term, that will save us money. Again, I get that it doesn't help us right now, and it's, we're feeling it right now. But using that money, unfortunately, is short-sighted for us.
Has anybody ever thought of, this override crap started in 1980. The state doesn't have to obey what they tell us to obey.
Correct.
Right.
So, has anybody thought of going to the state and saying, we can't operate under this 1980 enactment? It started in 82.
We talk about it all the time.
Well, I mean,
And we have asked our legislators
Plus, the
about it.
lottery came in in 1972 with the promises that, oh, all this lottery money is going to education in our state. Oh, that's wonderful. Do we get any lottery money?
Some.
Probably not.
as
Yeah,
a
we
town,
get some.
We get some.
we're getting less and less and less, clearly, because we're getting less and less
Well,
money
I
from the
think
state.
we should go to the State House and scream at them.
Monday.
100%.
Monday is
Amherst.
they're going to UMass Amherst, right? They're talking about the bill for increased funding, changing the school formula, which is what we've been talking about, has been really hurting us in the most recent times, which is why we've seen that spike in education from, $500-ish thousand increases to now all of a sudden $1 million plus every year, and that's because of the state. On both, there's a formula that says how much the town of Rutland's citizens can afford, and then the chapter 71, 70?
71.
71.
I'm sorry, no,
70.
you're right, 70.
The chapter 70 formula on how much Wachusett Regional gets, and that number has gone down, well, the increase has gone down these last 2 years, and that means basically that the school district is getting $3 million less funding from the state each year, and we're making up that difference. So we're being asked on both sides of that, the town, the state is saying that we can pay more, plus the district is getting less money from the state, so they are asking us to cover that difference. So we're getting hit on both sides of that, which is, unfortunately, both of those two things are state decided.
I think we should riot against the state.
I-
They don't have to obey their laws, why do we?
Well, it's, what's it called, an unfunded mandate?
Yes.
Unfunded mandate.
Stormwater.
Some of them.
Yeah.
All of those
But
things.
that's federal though, so.
Yeah, but then we had
Still
the
unfunded
vote by
mandate.
mail, then we had the extra voting hours, that's all unfunded mandates.
Yeah.
Well, I understand, but in the state, there's a law about unfunded mandates that the state's supposed to pay you for.
So, yeah, so with the cut budget, the highway wages, they're union as well, aren't they? So that's still up for discussion. Do we have any, I don't wanna say certainty, but any feelings as to when those negotiations might come to fruition
Uh,
with an agreement.
Yeah, no, so.
Whether it be a good agreement or a bad agreement, because that will change this budget.
Yep, well, so, to be clear, I think we gave, it's the same, you asked me a pot of money that we have available in resources. And they are working amongst themselves and, you know, I can only directly connect with the union.
I know,
So,
I know.
you know, I'm communicating, I shared this cut budget information with the union rep, from ASME, and then they're working with their stewards and employees to come up with something that makes sense. You know, some unions treat it differently, some decide to go by seniority, it really depends. Basically, what we have is the amount of resources that are available, and then they make it work with, again, that pot of money that we have allocated to them. So, to answer your question about timeline, you know, I've now had 3 phone calls between last night and this morning, with the reps. I think we're gonna have some more discussions probably tomorrow and over the weekend and into next week, so I don't know when it'll be resolved, but.
I'm only asking because as we start putting this out, if it changes, we've gotta be,
Yeah.
and it's okay, well, this is the reason why.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, to be fair to these employees, they're also looking for clarity too about what this looks like.
I know, and I
you know,
understand that, I
and
get it.
Definitely think, you know, obviously that's ASME's position as well, as they also want to make sure that we come to a resolution as quick as possible.
Anyone have anything else on the cut budget?
With the cut budget, we can spend all the money we want with, on capital, because there's not gonna be anybody to run any of it, it's gonna stay beautiful and new, because it's gonna be parked in the garage.
And just a note on that, I think it's a fair point, right? I mean, I think obviously with cut budget, we are very, very likely to
Oh,
scale back our capital.
Yes, of course we are.
I'm glad you just said that, though. I do have a couple, man, I won't be able to find it right now. In the highway, what page is that one? Oh, right here, oh, my phone is a good spot. Oh, that's facilities. There we go. Highway wages is reduced by 206, under the cut budget, is reduced by $264,000.
Yeah, so this impacts one position, believe it or not, and then the rest is a proposal to split expenses between the enterprise funds that we have. So have, you know, more labor allocation on water, sewer, and stormwater work. Very similar to like what has been done in previous years as well.
Now, are they gonna do more
This
water
is like
and
the
sewer?
this is like the electricity bill and the,
That's right.
and the cell phone bills and everything. Oh, nope, we need to centralize. Nope, can't do it. Nope. Okay.
So how is it that highway work would get allocated to water and sewer? I mean, this is an argument that's been going,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
dear and
Well,
dear
again,
to
you
me,
ask the
but.
DPW director, and he'll say, oh, well, I need more water and sewer and stormwater.
Well, you
work
can
anyway."
say that, but see, I even asked two people ago, I said, can you come up and really put down a note so we could look at this much time is spent here, you know, keep track of it for a while, so we'd have a reasonable set of data to look at and understand what they're saying, but, I mean,
And so, Nancy Macaruso does track that, and that's kinda how we end up charging to the different expenses, right? So, we do have current employees right now that are already split between highway and, especially sewer.
well, they should be, the ones that are in the sewer department should be working on sewer, the ones in water should be working on.
But a lot of them
I understand.
already aren't 100%, especially on the sewer side. Because, you know, we don't have a sewer treatment plant, so we're not,
No, I
It's
understand
like
that,
doing
but,
sewer work
and I
out
also
there.
understand why they were put there way back when they first started, but I guess what I'm saying, I don't think it's fair to the water and sewer ratepayers if we're doing highway work on water and sewer
yeah,
fees.
and they wouldn't be, right? They'd have, if they're working on, highway work, they have to be charged the highway budget. If they're working on sewer, I remember watching this discussion, a couple of years ago when Joe Buckley was talking about it with the override budget, right?
Right,
You know, you're gonna see less highway work, maybe.
well,
you'll see a little bit
this
more
is coming, this number is coming out of the highway wages, so,
Yeah, well, you just said you're gonna see
We're gonna
less
see
highway
less
work.
highway work, we're not gonna be
Yeah.
mowing lawns,
So-
we're not gonna be fixing stuff.
So Karen's point before was, without the audit, these things might not be trackable.
Yeah, and, you know, to be clear, you know, we're still gonna have to do an audit, you know, you'll likely see a portion, you'll likely see a reserve fund transfer request, for a portion of that, and we'll cover this with another expense. This may also end up being as a part of our, you know, capital plan request, we're also, requesting, $40,000 for the certification for the assessor's office in capital plan. You know, we're gonna have to do an audit. It's just,
So do it this year rather than next year.
So we're not really cutting it out of the
Yeah.
budget, we're just trying,
But see, that,
we're
but,
finding a different way to pay for it,
but
which is.
that right there
Yeah.
Causes a problem with
causes a problem with
transparency.
transparency, sorry.
Yeah, it does.
we're still doing an audit. We have to. There's a lot of things, unfortunately, that we're gonna end up having to do here that you don't see reflected. You know, unfortunately, when police officer or police cruiser tires need replacement, we're gonna have to pay for it somewhere, so that's how we end up
Little
doing.
kids.
Yeah, well, that's, you know, that's why probably in previous, you're gonna see a lot more with this kind of budget, you're gonna see a lot more activity of line item transfers and reserve fund transfer requests. Because, you know, we're going back to very, very lean supplies and services budgets, but we still have work to do.
Mhm.
You know, especially for the day-to-day work that needs to be
Well,
done.
I suppose that goes back to my point of, we're not really, like, you're saying that it's gonna end up getting done, so it's gonna come out of somewhere, and we're pulling the magic bunny out of the hat, and the townspeople are gonna say, you
So
did
what
end
did
up
we do
doing
a
this
couple
for
years
us
ago, guys?
anyways.
What did
No,
we do?
I'm not disagreeing, I just,
You know?
I'm.
But that's the comment that
Yeah.
people are making from a couple of years ago.
You always
Yeah.
find the money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at, we did, we're pretty much preserving positions.
Like
Right.
cutting hours on all
Yeah.
positions by
Yeah.
25%.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a huge hit
yeah,
to the staff.
yeah.
Mhm.
But you're not seeing
Provide the
layoffs, right?
services. Provide the services.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you're right, but you're not, you're not
Some-
seeing layoffs, right? And that's where, you know, I think people unfortunately, they, you know, the comments that have been made about the school district is you need to lay off people, right? And I don't disagree with the sentiment, but, and unfortunately, I think people are gonna look at this and they're gonna say, why would I go for an override when I'm not seeing
Mhm.
bodies,
Right.
right? I still think it's terrible. I still think it's a reduction in services, whether it's people, in terms of less hours for the people that do the work, that's been mentioned. And then also, you know, how are we gonna pay for some of these things? There are inherently things that we will not do, that's been mentioned, but there's also, you know, other things that are statutorily required, so.
So, big
It's
question.
you, throw more free cash in and we pay for all these things that we need to do.
So question,
Or we continue to trim elsewhere. But again, you know, especially on the wages side, this was, you know, the select board gave me a directive, especially on, personnel, so, you know, trying to minimize that as much as possible. You know, if it's the appetite to increase the use of free cash, we can do that, you know, to put in and be reflective of these things.
so what's the impact on employees who have contracts with the cuts? Does that, nothing?
Nothing.
Yeah, so the impact
So
for,
it doesn't void a contract if the contract says we would pay a certain amount of money for it, for the services provided by an individual. And we're gonna take that contract and say, it's not going to be 50,000, it's going to be 45.
so the contracted employees that we have right now have proposed level funding their salaries. So if this is accepted in the interim, each of those employees in the select board will have to enter into a side letter agreement
Okay,
reflecting that change.
okay. All right, good.
Go ahead.
To finish up, I think rather than dropping what Tommy was saying about water sewer and into DPW, if we can move DPW into water sewer, does that not imply that water sewer was overcharging? And if you can keep bringing them back and forth between the two, I understand that people are doing the work. But if you're doing the work over here, and like I said, if you're moving DPW people to keep them some semblance of whole into water sewer, was water sewer not getting covered before for the work that needs to be done? Are they gonna be, cause I've heard that if the DPW time is moved over to water sewer, DPW services won't be performed. So I'm not understanding how this can be so wishy-washy, and when we do that, we don't have, to Tommy's point, we don't have historical data to know what the real cost of doing business in either one of those departments.
Yes, that's a good question. So right now, the water department is actually operating one operator down. And I think we're also actually still down on our sewer FTE operators as well. And then obviously, we have not hired any additional positions to fund other stormwater. So the director is essentially taking those vacant positions, if you will, and allocating that salary proportionally to the existing staff. if that
So is
makes
somebody
sense.
from DPW gonna be able to be a water operator?
Yes, yeah, yeah, and so we actually have some folks that are that used to be in the water department, have their certifications that went over to DPW for whatever reason, so, and, you know, there's one thing, just on the DPW budget that we did notice this year, was, not only is this affecting the position, but the override budget actually planned on the highway side to fund 3 additional positions. We only filled 2. So there was already a vacancy factor there, on the highway wages that will be reflected.
So, I
And
want,
then just, one final thing, I'm sorry, there's a little bit of a change in methodology for how we plan on funding the clerical staff of the highway department. Historically, they've been funded essentially 50-50 from highway and water sewer. Actually, one employee particularly is 100% water sewer. Now we are splitting the salary 25% across highway, water, sewer, stormwater.
The part-time employee was strictly water and sewer,
Yeah.
right, before?
Yep.
And now you're saying the other clerical person there is gonna be 50-50?
No, 25% from each of the funding sources, so 25% highway, 25% water, 25% sewer, 25% stormwater.
So the stormwater bills are gonna go up too then? Gotta go up sometime, they're gonna have to.
You gotta pay for
When the
it.
new
If you're gonna
permit
ask the
comes out,
citizens,
Jen, go ahead.
I mean, that's the way it is, death on taxes, right?
I think it's just important to note for the highway wages that we're not losing staff, we're removing staff. So yes, we'll have a reduction in highway services, but those employees are still retaining their positions, their hours, their wages. So I just, to make note of that, it's not the same as a reduction in their hours, they're not losing hours or something.
Yeah, but I think that, and that's covered by what Asa just talked about, the open positions that are in
Yep.
the water sewer right now, basically they're filling in those open positions.
Yes,
Um,
my point being, they're moving
Yeah.
to another open position, they're not losing, it's still only the clerical side that is actually taking a reduction. So
Yeah, and I think, by saying that we're keeping those people, even though highway services are gonna be reduced, it's still, an average citizen is gonna say, I can deal without a lawn being mowed, and especially because this person's keeping their job, or keeping a job, I could care less that the
Right.
lawn's,
And if we
you
can
know.
do that, that's great, I want to keep these people employed,
Right,
but my point is we don't have an option to move the clerical staff to a different open position so they can retain their,
Well, there are, but those fees are already being split up anyways to pay for the
For
clerk.
some-
well,
Not
you know,
all
the
of them.
point, her point is that the biggest burden is being seen in the clerical staff as far as the reduction in their, and frankly, Austin's salary too.
And-
Yes.
And I don't think Austin is saying he's gonna work 30 hours, cause I can't imagine anyone,
he said just the opposite.
Yeah.
that was my
Still
other
gonna work his
comment,
best.
and I made this comment on Monday, as much as I admire Austin for essentially making that sacrifice, stating that he's gonna continue to work his full-time on the reduced salary, it goes back to the earlier conversation where we are now saying we have a full-time town administrator that's working for $95,000 a year.
Right.
So when and if Austin ever chooses to leave, we will not have an appropriate budget to hire a new administrator at what the expected salary will be.
Yep.
So
That
where
is
would you
not-
take the money to add it?
This is, I have made the comments in the past where we are getting to the point where we can't take a little bit from here, a little bit from here. To your point earlier, Alex, it's not making a big enough impact. We need to start identifying actual things to cut out completely that will have a larger impact on this, and I don't wanna do it, but how else are you gonna make that point that we don't have money to fund things in this town? You cut positions, you don't fill them. You cut complete services, you don't fill them because you don't have the ability to do it.
The one thing that I would like to hear specifically from the DPW, and I want him to be held to this, would be is that means the lawn up front doesn't get cut because there's concerts on the common. It doesn't get cut because there's July 4th. If there's no money, there's no money. Figure out how to do it with other volunteer services. That means that I remember Joe Buckley saying, when a swing breaks, we can't fix it. That means we tie it up. We have to stick to that if we're gonna get to this cut budget. God forbid we do. But we have to stick to that because that didn't happen last time. And things got done and everyone was like, oh, it's not so bad.
Well, the pool was gonna be closed at 1 year, and then magically it was open.
Yeah, that's revolving.
That's a
No, I
That was a
understand
volunteer,
that.
that
I'm
was a
just saying-
volunteer who gave the money.
Right, and I
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
But that just comes back to the same question of, you seem to come up with money somewhere.
Right.
But, and I think to Pete's point, that the average citizen will see that, or be told from the grapevine that the pool is closing, and then they're gonna see it open, and they won't know why it's opening. You know,
Exactly.
those who look for the information is gonna find it,
Sure.
but, I mean, we're talking about like 500 to 1,000 people out of our 10,000 population.
The hardest thing is that we've gotta make sure that if we're gonna take these cuts and hit them the way they are, that they have to live up to them and stop trying to fill holes.
It has to hurt.
It's gonna have to hurt,
Right.
and I don't wanna see it either, but every time we've ever done this, we've always seemed to come up with it, and then it
But you
becomes
gotta
an
make
issue.
it louder.
You must be very important.
I got one little note.
And I understand that that's, you know, there's gonna be that sentiment out there of, well, if you don't pay or else.
I don't
That's
wanna
kind
say-
of where we're at.
I don't wanna say pay or else, but if we're gonna do this cut budget, we can't keep plugging holes because
Yep.
well, soccer needs them cut, or
Well-
this or that, whatever it is, it gets done and has gotten done for many years.
That's what, I think I'm a little bit concerned about Austin's comment about some of these things that we're cutting are gonna end up getting done and we're gonna pay for it.
Exactly.
Those things that are definitely need to get done, need to stay in the budget, and we need to cut that money from somewhere else. Cause then, again, we're just lying to,
It's not transparent.
it's not transparent, we're gonna end up we're gonna do what everyone keeps saying here, that we're gonna
Find them.
find the money and we're gonna do it, and no one's gonna believe that it's not possible, so we need to make, we need to fix the current cut budget to include those things that have to happen. Aside from the emergency, like, the tires blow and we get a replacement, I get that,
That's
that's
different.
unexpected
That's
things.
That's
But we know we need to do an audit, and we know we're gonna pay for that audit, that needs to stay in this budget. We have to put that back in, and we have to find someone else to cut. I mean, that's my opinion, I'm advising that it needs to be changed.
Yep.
And then, of course, I'm gonna say the next unpopular
So,
thing.
can I ask, are you recommending, cuts or additional revenue to pay for that?
Cuts.
Cuts.
Well,
I
where
mean,
did the revenue
so,
come from
I'm
without the
recommending
additional
that-
revenue?
It's free cash, I don't, if you're telling me to appropriate.
I'm recommending that we don't use the free cash that we normally use, like $150,000 that we normally use to balance our, or to include in our budget, because we can. But that, I would advise and recommend that we use that $150,000, that we don't even use the $250,000 that is being talked about in the cut budget. That's my recommendation, again, that's my personal, there's other people here, so we're not taking a vote on that, that's how I feel.
You said I'm not using it, right? that what you just said?
I said that we should only be using
The only other
the
question that I would have
150,000.
Oh, okay, right,
So with
yes.
this cut
Yeah, yeah.
budget, that means there's no details for free for the July 4th. July 4th committee is going to have to pay for
They
it.
do pay for them.
Yeah, I think they do.
They already
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
They paid over $5,000 last year in details.
Okay, cause I know they get some deals in the past, so we wanna make
No,
sure
they-
that that's happening,
As did the events committee.
and the events committee, so I've gotta make sure that that's all coming out, because I know in the past there's been funny monies going around, and we wanna make sure that that hits.
Jen, did you have a question? I thought I saw your
No,
hand.
no,
Oh,
that was-
oh, you, I'm sorry.
Is the
That's
bottom
Jen,
line
that's Carol.
1.89 million is the bottom budget line, and we're looking for a $2.1 million override? So
I-
it looks like
I,
there's,
so it was originally like 2.07, something like that, when the 2.1 was suggested.
Yeah.
The, education came back with a cut of
so
like
there is a
100
little bit of
grand.
money left.
Correct, yeah, it changed since the original 2.1 was,
And
suggested,
And
yeah.
then I have a question probably for Austin, have we ever looked into, I know we have 2 custodians for the town, have we ever looked at contracting that out?
So, informally, yes, obviously that's an impact to a bargaining unit as well, so, that's been something that we've explored but haven't pursued
But I,
formally yet.
So Austin, you did a good job with the 5-year plan. Now we have a cut budget.
Turn it off.
Can we do a 5-year projection off of the cut budget?
Do this.
Yeah, so that's
yours.
that's up to your first page, right?
Okay.
So, with this cut budget, obviously, there's gonna be some changes here, but, what you see with the use of, this has the use of free cash, but you see in the outer years, FY 27, 2.183, 28, 3.8, 5.7, 7.7.
Okay, so it becomes important, I think, that we're being honest with folks.
Yep.
When we sit in meetings, that they know that if they decide to go with the cut budget, somebody's gonna be back to them next year asking for more.
2 million more.
And if.
Potentially.
And if that's taken out, then we're gonna be asking for more after that. Eventually, there's an old, no, I'm old, so I remember some of these things from TV.
Can't get blood from a stone?
What's that?
Can't get blood from a stone?
No, not that. True, but not that. The commercial was Fram oil filters.
Mhm.
Pay me now, or pay me later. And that's what's gonna happen. I mean, somebody at some point in time is going to decide, well, we gotta pay for this stuff. And then we're gonna see a big hit that's gonna come into tax.
Yeah, I mean, in 5 years, if we don't have an override, we're not gonna have a town,
Yeah, very simple.
pretty much, based on the projection.
Yeah.
Right.
And do we wanna get to the point where the state police come in here and have to be doing our patrol?
Those are gonna be the options that,
I know.
I mean, when we do this budget, and I'm with Alex, I'm totally in favor of an override. I talked to my neighbors, and they're real mad at me, so I say that, but if we don't do this override, then we will be shutting things down. We will be turning on lights, streetlights are gonna be on.
And it may not be this year,
No.
but it absolutely will
coming.
be in the years.
It's coming down.
I think that's what we need to get, this cut budget, again, it hurts a lot of people. I don't think it hurts enough people, and I think it hurts the wrong people, frankly. But it's just the start.
And we talk about impacts on employees, oh my God, go out to the next couple of years, if we have to implement these cuts to
Oh,
get
we
down
won't
to
have
these.
employees.
Yeah.
We won't have
Like I
town.
said, this, if by chance the 2.5 override does not pass, education starts July 1st of this year as to every single month, every single week, whatever, we have to do something to get it out there that we will need another override.
Yeah,
Because there's no two ways about it.
right.
Yeah.
And I think that's these information sessions that we're gonna have.
We have to do it from July 1st straight through.
Okay.
Because you can't just do it the last 5 weeks, that's nice to do a push, but
Oh,
you
I see
gotta
what you're
do,
saying.
you gotta keep having it in front of them.
Even if it
throughout
does,
the year.
even if it passes, we still need to do that
I
because
agree,
we have.
July
funding,
1st,
so.
we have to keep going, because without that, it's,
And we
then
need to
it's the last
figure out
5
a
weeks.
way to make it work for everyone. I mean, we
Yeah.
need to do our best as a town, as, the boards, all the boards, to figure out a way that we can make it work for everyone in town. And I don't know what that is. I suggested something last week, which is something that Austin brought up to me, so I'm not taking credit for it, but it's creating a fund for those people who are struggling. But that puts a bigger burden on the people who can afford it. I get it. But we gotta figure something out, because nobody wants anyone to hurt more than we have to. I don't know how else to say it. It doesn't sound good, but I'm at a loss for words, I guess.
Alex, may I just make a comment about the public info sessions? I think too, it's too late to do it now, but moving forward, I think we have to come up with some more creative ways to reach more of our population, because the reality is, we're probably gonna be speaking to the same handful of people
Yeah.
in those meetings, and we're not gonna hit the majority of people that we need to. So I think we have to kind of brainstorm whether that's YouTube videos, reverse 911 text messages
Right.
through something.
I didn't think we could do that. I didn't think we could do reverse
No, no.
911.
Darren didn't want to do that.
It's
No, I
close.
didn't think we could do that
They did
legally.
it last year.
You
or
can,
the-
because people sign up for notifications that are not emergency related.
Right,
They're just a general town notification that you can sign up for to get
Okay.
text messages about. And we actually did a couple years ago to tell people about town meeting dates, so that is an option.
No, it's not. I have,
I don't know if we can figure this out, but to that point, if there's any like school events that are happening in the next month or so, we could potentially talk to a large portion of people there.
If I may,
Sorry.
if
Yeah,
I may.
go ahead.
I think the school's already reached out to PTOs to ask for PTO to allow them to do some advocacy for the budget stuff as well. So they're working on
The
it.
school has asked to do advocacy for the school.
right.
They're not gonna do advocacy for the town.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Our school committee,
the end of the
I
day,
should say, our school committee reps have reached out to our PTOs to ask to provide information in the importance of,
what the override means.
yes.
And the override helps both the town and the school, so whether it's in the school's interest and they're doing it, I guess, I don't.
But we have to get the.
Everyone, we have to.
We have to get the word out.
Yep.
And.
Well, we have
it's
meetings scheduled, Austin scheduled a whole bunch of things, a lot during the day, which,
Several during the
I
day.
can't do that.
yeah, but I'm sure that we can find representation that can be there, from as many things as possible. And frankly, the ones during the day, if town department heads can be at those, cause I always feel, struggles to me whenever we ask them to come to a lot of meetings, because it seems like we're asking them to work a lot of extra hours. That goes double for Austin. I got nothing else. Did you have something? Did you
Yes,
have something?
I do. So we're gonna adjourn right after this, but my question is,
He's talking
He's
to
done,
everybody else.
he's done.
Attaboy, Tommy.
on the school budget stuff, right? Are you getting any kind of feedback or stuff from the other 4 towns at all about what their feelings of these budget increases are, or where they stand on it? Is it something that we should try to get together and say, we need to vote against this and try to get this down a little bit,
So I've only
or
had
whatever we can?
That's a great question. So I only had a conversation with the town managers from the other towns. I know Paxton, obviously, their situation from last year into this year is not great, so they are going for an override. I think their intent is to try to tie in the school somehow into the override vote, but their override is about 1.1 million. Which I think was a similar number last year. It was around there last year. Holden, I
Did
read.
several
Yeah,
iterations.
yeah, they started to do a couple in Elfin, right?
Mhm.
Holden, I think anyone who read the landmark today, it looks like they're probably going for one. I don't think they've come up with a number yet, but, the only 2 towns that it doesn't look like they are Sterling and Princeton. But I think Sterling was the lowest one for, assessment percentage wise at 5-ish%. All the others were at least 6 or 7%,
Yeah.
so.
But that's because Sterling is already at the max for their,
Yeah,